5 to the 303. Welcome to TCSP. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Brian and the Casually Serious Band.
Yeah, just really quick. My name is Jacoby. I'm from the law offices of Buff Guy and Fine Bitch, and I need you guys to know the opinions you are about to hear are expressly the opinions of the Casually Serious podcast and nobody else. Maybe you, maybe your friends, I don't know. Just don't get pissed at these freaking guys because they're stand-up guys. That's just a disclaimer. Thank you.
Nice.
Hey.
All right. We got
What's
that out of the way.
Legal crap? What is that all about? Is that what that call was about last week? Is that why we weren't on last week?
How many times have we had to break the show either at the beginning or the middle to throw one of those out there? Because everyone thinks that this is just some sort of mom and pop show. But let me tell you, man, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you would not even believe, just in the way of legal issues. Hey, you all right?
Something bit me, man. This studio's full of I don't know, man. I'm actually standing. I'm doing the show standing today. I'm trying something different.
I like that. I like that vibe. You're giving me that like Gallagher vibe. The whole moving around thing.
Hey, Gallagher, I like that. That was our last show. It's been a couple weeks, but I mean, that's what we did last. I believe we were talking about stand-up comedians. What's up, Andrew?
Andrew Pace, what's up, Merc? How you doing, my brother? Always good to see you. Always good to see you. So today we decided to do our Casually Serious podcast about bad albums from good bands. You know, we don't necessarily want to talk about this a lot, but it's something I think we should talk about. It's there's a lot of taboo subjects out there. Again, we've spoken a lot about suicide and not wanting to talk about it. We've spoken a lot about whether you're PlayStation or Xbox. We've spoken a lot about a lot of controversial sides that you're going to take. And I'm not 100% you're going to take our side on one of, or maybe any of these. I don't know. And again, I'm a lifelong music lover, as is this guy over here. Okay. I know this for a fact. So if he's able to come up with the bands that we have come up with and decide to pull an album out that is not great, believe us when we say we truly want to love it and tried to find a way to love it, but just simply could not. It's just too hard. There's a few albums that just made it impossible to do so. So we're going to go over a bunch of those as much as we can. I feel like we can get that done within an hour. It's not really going to be a monster thing.
That's right.
Tammy's dropping the old hola on us. So how's it going,
Hey.
Tammy? Thanks for coming by and hanging out. That chick's cool. She makes a hell of a spread.
She does.
That was a great time. That was a great time of your birthday. Again, thank you so much for your hospitality, man. That was beautiful.
Awesome. Happy to do it. Sorry we couldn't have live streamed it. It was just too crazy. But sometime we'll just invite everybody over for a party for, Casually Serious or something. Why not?
A Casually Serious party. Yeah, that's
an excuse for a party, really. So it doesn't matter why. I mean, I turned 47. It's not like it was a special birthday or anything.
It was a special birthday. It was a special birthday because up to that point, you made it to your birthday.
That far?
You made it that far over all the stuff. And God knows we've all been through a handful of shit as of you. But we all arrived and converged on your house and had a great time. So
it was a good time.
It was a dandy old time. Thank you again for that.
Still a mess back there, but
I can't even imagine. So I don't know. I don't know if the reason I kind of have these listed. And I guess the only reason I uploaded the way I uploaded these was because in my computer they are in alphabetical order. So I guess maybe we're going in alphabetical order for this one.
Does it matter? I mean, really,
nah. You know what? I'll do it and then I'll erase it after we're done. So let's start off with boom.
This one. Hey, of course, because I'm wearing the shirt. We had to start with
Yeah.
Van Halen.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Diver
this
Down.
one, Diver Down, man. Let's go check out the track list right here.
Yes.
All right. So
yes.
go over that with us real quick, Ken, man. Please.
Well, I mean, when you go through these songs, you've got 4 cover songs on this album. You've got 2 instrumentals on this album. So when you really get into the creativity from the band, you don't have a lot of it. But at the same time, though, these covers are great. I mean, great covers. And so it's one of these albums where you have to look at it and say, is it a bad album because it's really not showing the creativity of the band? Or is it a bad album because we don't like the songs? Because the songs are good, but they're not theirs, you know, and there's not a lot of really, you know, at that time, what you wanted to hear was Diamond Dave. And you really, he was focusing his voice, of course, in doing these songs and doing them well, but not in doing Van Halen songs, which is what the fans were looking for at the time. So
not at all.
This was a tough one, though, for me, just because, yes, that album, because of those reasons, is terrible. But Van Halen's worst album is Van Halen 3 by far. The only one with Gary Cherone on vocals, the lead singer from Extreme. It was terrible. I mean, terrible. So, and it still had their name on it. It has their name on it. So if we're really going to talk about their worst albums, I really believe that's it. But I almost don't count it because it's got to be a Van Hagar thing, you know, one or the other. It's either Diamond Dave or Hagar in there to really be Van Halen. So, so if we go by that, I think ultimately we did choose the right one on Diver Down. What do you think?
I think so because there's a bunch, honestly, we can go to after sort of like the big 3 of them that were rocking, and that one I believe that was 82, right? Diver Down. So, you know, they had kind of come out of the late 70s where Gene Simmons had discovered them and said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and produce your first album. And Gene was like, you know, these guys are going to be the future. And then eventually I think he cut off from them or something and let them do their own thing. But the party years with the 70s, right up to about 80 or something like that. And I guess that album was sort of an experiment. I don't really know. But again, for them to, a lot of times, some of these albums, for all we know, I didn't dig too hard in the background, but a lot of them could just be albums that they needed to make in order to fulfill a contract to get out of or something.
Very true.
I don't know that.
This could have been that for sure.
Right. And if anybody knows any of that shit, please, by all means, you know, throw that in the comment section if you're watching. I know we don't have a whole lot of folks on tonight, but even if you're listening after the fact, throw it in the comment section because
it's always good to know.
We want to know.
I mean, I feel like a lot of these things are things we did know at one point. It's just there's not enough room to keep all this stuff in our heads. So it kind of just goes by the wayside depending on its importance or not. But, you know, and not to just real quick with Van Halen, because I find them interesting in looking at the worst albums. What's your favorite album? I mean, because, you know, Van Halen and 1984 probably are going to be at the top. Fair warning, maybe. I mean, what's your favorite? What's your favorite Van Halen album? Because I personally think Van Halen 1. Van Halen is the best album from this band. I mean, 1984 is the most popular album, I think, if you just go by songs and individual tracks. But to me, that is just an incredible first album from this band.
Yeah, I don't know that you can beat that album if I'm talking about the best one out there. And I would only put that up against Mean Streets.
Oh.
Fair Warning, sorry. Fair Warning. Just because of Mean Street, Sinner Swing, I really love. Unchained is probably, if not my favorite Van Halen song, one of my favorite out songs. So This Is Love is pretty good. There's a few on there that actually, if I'm being honest, I'm sure there's a lot of hardcore Van Halen freaks that would be like, that wasn't a great album. But we've got Van Halen 2, Women and Children First, Fair Warning, Diver Down, then 84. And I think I checked out right around 5150.
Yeah. I mean, that was just
Here's something I want to go ahead and admit this on the air right now, okay?
Oh dear.
And it's not like I needed to say this, but Wheeler, what's up, brother? How you doing, bud? Love you so much, man. Thank you for hanging out with us.
Wheeler.
I want to say this real quick, man. When it comes to bands going through this maturation period where they come out with an album that's either experimental or too early for their fan base, I I'm that person who's pissed. I think I talked to Stoney about it. Who Stoney was almost able to join us tonight. I tried real hard to get him on, but we couldn't book him. He's so busy. But he was gonna try and get on. I talked to him. I talked to Jay numerous times about how we're purists, where it's hard for us to get on board with a new singer for a new band. So and unless we're talking about going from Di'Anno to Dickinson, which was, we were too young, I think, at that time to even care. Not to mention it went from Di'Anno to Dickinson. So
exactly,
there's really nothing to complain about that.
Not from Dickinson to Blaze.
I personally have apparently have a predisposition to not liking albums that are experimental or departure from what I already really like from a core band. So when it came for Van Halen to take on Sammy Hagar, I wasn't ready for that. I can only now say Hagar is a friggin' amazing singer and was a beautiful choice for that band, because there was nobody else that could have come in to do that and go on to write the songs that they did, have the success that they did.
I agree, and I think 5150 was a great album. Actually, at the time, I feel the same way as you. I was kind of in the Diamond Dave boat, so I wasn't a big Hagar fan, and thus didn't really like the album at the time when it came out. But listening to it afterwards and even to this day, that's a really good album. But that's really the last one I like. Is beyond that, I don't like any of that stuff. OU 812, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, all that's terrible to me. But they had one good one with him at least.
Well, and having said all that, I'm going to pull this one up right now, because this is one of those albums that even to this day, I might sing the songs because they've been hammered into my brain. But it's not to say that I like any of them. And that's this shit right here.
Interesting. Oh, God.
All right. So
God.
Now listen, all you Metallica fans, you guys that are going to jump on me for this, I appreciate it. Do it. That's great. I absolutely think the best work Metallica ever did were the albums they did before this album dropped. All right.
So I agree.
All right.
I'm with you so far.
This is the deal. We were, let's say, in 1983, I was 10, so 1986 or 1980, in 1986, I'm 16. We're starting to get to that area where they're branching off after And Justice for All. And let's call it 17, 18 years old. I open up this album expecting some sort of extension of Harvester of Sorrow or Dyer's Eve or anything from Kill 'Em All, some sort of departure or callback. And all of a sudden, I get songs like Enter Sandman, which, listen, fine, great. That may be anthemic at this point, great. But, it was just all slow-paced shit. Unforgiven. Oh, my fucking God, dude.
Terrible.
By the time I got to Nothing Else Matters, all right, I know for a fact I hit eject on my CD player from the 80s, and it actually slid out. You remember that? We're old. I pulled the CD out, and I flung it across the room, and it shattered. And I never listened to that album again. And I'm talking about the album in its entirety the way it was meant to be listened to, again, until I was on a flight, I think in 2015, where I heard it and was like, all right, I get that now, but there's no way you could have expected me to get on board with that then. There's no way. I
agree with that too, 100%, because of the way that album changed pace with that band, and also what was going on kind of socially with that band. I think there was a lot of things and reasons why fans kind of some of the hardcore fans shied away from it from that point. So for that, I agree with you, for that album, for Black being their worst album. But the thing is, that's not their worst album. Once again, easily Reload, terrible album.
You know what? I was going to say Saint Anger.
That's another one. I mean, they're all terrible. Those are worse albums than the Black Album. But the Black Album is when the terribleness began. So I have to agree with you because
Wheeler,
it was the beginning of the end for me.
I don't know if Wheeler's getting on me about Metallica right now, or if we're talking about Dave. So I'm a Diamond Dave fan, but I don't know. He's saying, "Good Lord, Bobby." I don't know if maybe that's because I'm given. I don't know. The problem is I've heard a lot of.
Be more specific, all right? Be more directive with your anger and what it is you need to say to us. Use your words, literally.
I can understand. I don't know if Lars and James sat down and said, "All right, look, here's the deal. the shelf life for a thrash band is like 3 fucking albums, and then after that you either
Gotta do
die,
something
we
else.
all get in a bus crash, everyone dies in a plane crash, we're all alcoholics, we cocaine overdose, or we pivot. And I don't really understand how any of them went from the massively cocaine fueled and Justice for All and landed anywhere near. And obviously we can go back and watch that documentary. Bob Rock had a lot to do with it, but how it all turned into that whole
It worked. It worked. All the cheerleaders were listening to Metallica, you know, all of the people that would never listen to Metallica, anything off of Injustice for All, suddenly loved Metallica. And that's why they did it. And it was for them, and the business move, and your whole idea was to make money and be successful. They did all the right things. They're relevant today. I mean, there's bands that are not. And they, even with some of those terrible albums, they've been able to find ways to keep themselves relevant, and they are. So, hey, good for Metallica, but there's worse albums than the Black Album, just musically, but it was, to me, I agree, the beginning of the end for that band, as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing I like after Injustice for All.
Yeah, that's there's just too much bad stuff there, man. I don't know what to say, man. I again, I was able to go back there and listen to it and say, all right, I understand how they needed to mature, or they needed to find a different direction because they didn't want to get left behind or something like that. That's cool. I get it. Great, cute.
They're probably right.
I don't understand how it went I don't know how it went to there. So who produced Mixed? I think I've got you right here. I think Bob Rock was the guy.
There you go.
Bob Rock was the guy. You know, and if you go watch that Some Kind of Monster thing, that's specifically about how that whole thing came to be. But again, I couldn't get on board with it after being such a monster fan of Injustice and listening to those 9.5 minute metal masterpieces.
They are.
I just could not get on board with it. So, but again, I gave you the disclaimer. I'm too much of a purist to be able to jump on board with any sort of new shit. So Ken, man, how about this one? How about this one right here, man?
What you got? Yeah. See, now we get into some little bit. I mean, if you're going to talk about greatest bands of all time, then you're going to definitely talk about Led Zeppelin. And if there's any band that, I mean, if it's possible even for them to make a bad album, it was this one, In Through the Outdoor. And this album came out in '79, so it's towards the end. You know, Bonham was already deep into his spiral abuse, and spiraled in that substance abuse, and there was so much of this just sort of desire to pump out another album or just one more kind of album, I think, at this point. And they pushed this album so hard, and they didn't have any of that blues rocky sound anymore. They lost so much of what their previous albums were. What's crazy is In the Evening is actually one of my favorite songs from Led Zeppelin, and it's on this album. But it's probably one of the only good songs. Maybe you can pick out one or two in here that are not terrible, Full in the Rain. But overall, when you listen to this album, you're not thinking Led Zeppelin. And most albums, when you're hearing Led Zeppelin, you know what you're listening to. And this is a band that absolutely was a front runner in changing the way that rock bands were going to start to put music together. And because of that, I think everybody was expecting that next album to be just that next step in that progression. Right. And this album didn't do that. And this album pretty much was the end for Led Zeppelin. So easily, this is the worst album from one of the absolute greatest bands.
Do you remember Mike Marsh?
I do.
All right. So obviously he went on to play for Dashboard Confessional. Right. He's with the Avett Brothers now. So he and I think on at least 2 occasions, have gotten together, got our drum sets together, and done like drum clinics with each other. And it only happened once or twice. I think I did it at my house once, and I think I might have. Well, he lived out there by the golf course, so I don't know. I think it was at my house. I had a big ass garage. At any rate, we tried to figure out how to play the drum beat, the drum intro for Full in the Rain, which is it's one of those things where like Todd Sugarman from was it Styx? I don't know. He has or Toto, right? I think that's who it is. Rosanna. That drum beat is a direct ripoff from Full in the Rain, completely. because it was such a tough, it's such a swingy thing to play. So it's very weird how we're able to we're going to pull these albums out, but there's going to be one gem on every one of them probably. It's just
Right.
that we're so used to there being
Of
like
course.
4 or 5 for these albums that we're saying to ourselves, how the hell are these even in the catalog right now?
It's got to be hard for a great band to not have at least a good song on even their bad albums. I mean, right? If you really can't consider them a great band then. I mean, that's what we're trying to do here is we're trying to put great bands out there, people that know we can all admit, whether we like them or not, that it's a great band. They're respected. They've won their awards. They've done their stuff. That's who we're trying to do. Well, we might get into a little bit of more obscure bands a little later, but so far we've done that.
I think we have, for God's sake.
I don't know, depending on what the next one is. Are you still going in alphabetical order? I'm trying to figure out what's coming next.
I'm just kind of spinning. So let's go.
There you go. There you go.
Not that
I had to leave Led Zeppelin so quick, but I think we did our thing.
I've got one. Here we go.
What you got?
Randomizer.
Oh God.
Oh, God is right. Oh, God is right, Ken Man. So here's the deal. We're not gonna. We can date ourselves. Everyone who's watching us right now knows how old we are. We had High and Dry, which was, I believe, their second album, and then Pyromania, which in my eyes is. I love that album. There we go. On through that. Pyromania is my favorite album of theirs, right? And they had all the hits on there. But see, the thing is that they were able to make these hits, but for some reason at that album, they were still part of that new wave of British heavy metal, being alongside Saxon, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, all these bands that were part of all that. But Def Leppard sort of found a different way to get in there, and songs like these were how they did it. All right. Women, Rocket, Animal, Love Bites. So
Love Bites is one of the worst songs. I hate that song. It's such a terrible song. My God, you can't turn the radio off fast enough when that song comes on for me.
Everybody claims that they ironically love Pour Some Sugar on Me, but there's a lot of people out there who really frigging do, okay? So don't act like you just like it because it's fun and stuff. And oh yeah, Becca, it's cool. You love that song, all right? That's the thing. They went for a particular demographic and they nailed it. Okay, this album made them friggin' billionaires, absolute friggin' billionaires. All right, so here we go again. We're talking about a situation where an album that I don't like is actually one of their most successful albums. Yep. And I think that's where maybe you, but I definitely have that sort of punk rock purist attitude where it's like the reason why I loved you is because you fucking juggled this shit. I loved how you juggled. All of a sudden you became a weightlifter or whatever stupid ass analogy that the hell was. I don't know what that was, but the difference between what you've done for so long to a change that is just so much of a departure. And unfortunately what this did was this actually, dare I say this, it made women a massive part of Def Leppard. If they weren't already by Pyromania, this album, for all intents and purposes, absolutely was a woman magnet. And it became, that's when they realized, all right, if the dudes aren't going to buy the fucking albums, the ladies are going to do it. Let's fucking do it from there on in. And they just made that stuff from here on out. What is your experience with Def Leppard Hysteria?
I was a huge Def Leppard fan. On Through the Night, I absolutely loved Pyromania. I probably wore the hell out of that cassette tape, just listening to it over and over again when that came out. Huge fan. So obviously after the accident and Rick, lost the arm and they had a long wait before the next album came out, this is what it was. So Def Leppard fans waited a long time for this album. So I would say as one of those fans that waited for it, I was excited. I was like, this is awesome. But was extremely disappointed with this album. These songs were not what I wanted to hear at all. It played to a whole different crowd. And this is that time though, when these albums came out, where it was just before kind of hip hop really taking over as the type of music in our country. And rock and roll obviously was kind of coming out of that from the grunge era and whatnot. And you were still getting some of these hair bands or whatever, like
Yeah.
and yeah, part of the British rock group as well, like Def Leppard, that were still relevant because the music that they had played was so popular for these same kind of age group folks. So we were still waiting to see what they were doing towards the end of all of this. But this is where you got that popular that music came from, really, where the people were listening to, this is what they were listening to. So before hip hop kind of took over as mainstream music. So this was all there really was. And they catered to that, just like Metallica did, Def Leppard did. They all played it perfectly. And whether it was their producers or whoever that knew this was the way things were going, and there was going to be a category here that was going to fit a group of people where, the grunge was too grungy for them and they weren't really into that. And the hip hop was still kind of too new and wasn't as popular enough. So this was perfect. And these were the albums that stayed hot because of that reason, I think, until hip hop ultimately took over.
Well, sad face for me. I don't like it. I didn't like it one bit.
No, that album sucks, and it still sucks. And they played "Pour Some Sugar on Me" out so bad that even if it was a decent song, it got played so damn much that was enough of all that. But yeah, I mean, "Love Bites" is so terrible. It's like one of the worst ballads ever written.
B Red, what's up, buddy? Good to see you, my friend.
Okay.
All right. So you know what? Now it's funny. Let's segue. Good segue. I don't know if you set me up for this or not, but we're gonna roll into this. This is. Again, we're going to go controversial on this because we don't know any fucking better. This album right here.
Oh, right? Man, look at you. Jeez. How's that a segue from Def Leppard? Okay. Oh, I did mention hip-hop. You're right.
You did. And if you mention hip-hop, you cannot not mention the god, Rakim, the greatest MC of all time. Battle me on it if you want. I don't care. You lose. Here's the deal, though. I was such a massive fan. All right, we had Paid in Full. There was just so much lyricism going on. All of a sudden, I get these songs. Now, listen, they actually, I believe he got top 100 of all time. But other than the opening song, "Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em," the rest of these songs to me are not great at all. Okay. Now, "In the Ghetto" was actually quite a prolific song. It made a lot of rounds because it told a serious story. And if nothing else in the world, Rakim was one of the greatest at weaving these kinds of stories. So what I'm trying to say to you is, if we're going to compare it, to Follow the Leader, or even the albums that came after, Don't Sweat the Technique, and maybe their debut album, this is just such a massive departure from the sound, and I don't really know why. I just never fell in love with it, man. "Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em" is a great song, but he can't do this song live because if you ever heard it, it's "I'm the arsenal. I got artillery, lyrics of ammo." It's very low spoken, and he has to find a way to project his voice live, so he can't even do this song live. So I don't know, man. Compared to Eric B. and Rakim albums that came before and after, oddly, that is the one that I don't love. I don't know if you have an opinion on that at all, Ken, man. If you liked "Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em" from Eric B. and Rakim.
I mean, for me, I think that's just an album that was done in a totally different idea or thought from them. And whether it was just Rakim saying, "This is my time to be able to say my story and be a little more melodic and kind of just change things up a little bit." Maybe it was just the wrong time to do it, but you saw what he came with even after. So this was just one of those outlier albums. And I mean, I would agree, just from what I like about listening to them, this would be at the bottom as well. So, but I think it was probably just something that, it was an artist's choice, and it was something that they wanted to do, whether it was to tell that story or to be able to just get a couple gems even out of their worst album.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't think it did well commercially. I think it got critically panned, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But again, it went on to be, I think, in top 100 of all time in terms of hip hop. I don't know, some weird shit like that. But not my favorite. Didn't like it. And didn't like any of these on this freaking list, if I'm being honest. So how about this one right here, Ken, man?
Oh, yes. Momentary Lapse of Reason is what the band had when they made this album. I mean, this was like right at the height of Roger Waters suing the band, trying to break all this up so that they couldn't continue making music. This is kind of the first album that was put out during that, and just basically them defying Roger and saying, this is what we're going to go forward and do. The problem is that this album just missed on so many ways. There are big songs on here. One Slip on the Turning Away. Definitely Learning to Fly is a song that, you know, most people know. So there's good songs on here, but they don't really hit all the way through. It's just one of these albums that you kind of have to push through a little bit and skip a couple songs here and there, because they just don't. You can listen to them over and over, but you just they don't work. They don't flow. They're not Pink Floyd songs. You could already see kind of where the influence of Roger Waters leaving the band and seeing a lot more of what the music of what Gilmour was going to do was really taking over here. And like I said, in some cases, it worked very well. There's some very good songs here, but it played, I think, even stronger into what the band did moving forward, and then releasing ultimately Division Bell a few years later, which I find to be such an incredible album from a band so many years past when they started it all, and what that band went through to be able to do. So this album here is definitely, I think, their worst overall, because there was enough of the original members in this band to have it really constitute being a Pink Floyd album. So I'll still stick to my guns on that, even though there's a couple good songs in there. But ultimately, I think it just showed where Gilmour wanted to bring this band versus where Roger Waters did.
Well, here's something that's going to make a little bit of sense to you. If you go ahead and take a little bit of bottom of the underneath Sorrow, the last song, and you look who it was produced by, you'll see that name Bob Ezrin is just kind of jumping out at me. Bob Ezrin is who made the album Destroyer by Kiss what it was. Ezrin was one of the great producers of the 70s, and went on to produce other bands in the 80s and whatnot. But he had a couple albums with Kiss that just have his stamp on it. And it's kind of crazy how I can kind of tell that there was a lot of experimentation done with this. I love On the Turning Away. It's a song. It's a dreary song. It's very Pink Floyd to me. Learning to Fly.
One Slip and On the Turning Away, I think, are very Pink Floyd type songs. Learning to Fly gets too poppy. I mean, that's what they made the video for, and you know, they got too poppy. It got too far away from what Pink Floyd is.
Yeah, Pink Floyd's about it's all. I guess the thing is we expect that to be able to live on. We expect that kind of sound, or at least the band, to get along long enough to continuously over and over make albums that are in the same vein of the albums that we love. And it doesn't work out. These are all cases in that point. And you'll have bands that you are an absolute friggin' fanatic of, but you have to admit to yourself that they're not the greatest albums. There's some sort of departure. There's a reason. Case in point, one of my, if not my all-time favorite metal bands, Slayer, decided that they were going to come out with an album called Diabolus and Musica, okay, where they were going to change up their sound a little bit and try and kind of get in there with the 90s sound and mix a little bit of grunge in there. And I'm not telling you that this is a grunge album from Slayer. All I'm telling you is that this is probably the worst album you will ever hear Slayer put out. And unfortunately, I think Slayer fans like myself will agree the reason why is because Rick Rubin had his hands on it. Rick Rubin also had his hands on Christ Illusion, I think Repentance, what was that? One of the newer ones. There's a few where Rick Rubin was involved in it, and they all just sort of sounded the same. But this song, or this album, was, by the time this album came out, I was already done. Matter of fact, anything past Seasons of the Abyss and before Christ Illusion, I didn't listen to, because Dave Lombardo was not in the band. That's the deal with Bob, all right? Bob not only will not listen to a band if you lose the fucking singer, but if you lose the drummer, because Bob's a drummer, then he's probably not going to be on board. And that's what happened with Slayer, man. They missed me for about 11 albums. And I picked them right back up sometime in like 2007 or 2005 or something, when they came out with another slew of Rick Rubin produced albums. But there's something about that album that sucks. I don't know if you've heard anything from it.
Oh, I've heard absolutely not one song from that album. See, most of what I get from Slayer was based on what you and Jay tell me. I was told to not listen to that album, so I just didn't. I believed you guys. I honestly haven't listened to one song on that, and I agree. I don't really listen to anything after Abyss, so that was it for me as far as Slayer is concerned. So I don't have much to say about this album. Probably is their worst one.
It's pretty bad, man.
I'll trust you on that.
It's pretty bad. Almost as bad as this. AC/DC. I was like, what is Flow on the Wall, dude? I don't understand. Why would you make an album called Flow on the? It's not how you spell that. And then there's an I in there, and I'm like,
you silly people, you.
The Australians are trying to pull a fast one on me. They Fly on the Wall. What are these songs?
I don't know any of these. I'm looking at them right now. I mean, Fly on the Wall I've heard of before, but honestly, I don't know any of those songs. None. Not one.
1985. Okay.
Maybe Hell or High Water, but they have a lot of songs with hell in it, so maybe that's what I'm thinking. Wow.
There's a problem, man. We're talking about one of the a lot of people argue they're one of the greatest hard rock heavy metal bands ever. I, for one, let me tell you right away,
certainly out of Australia.
Right. I'm kind of done listening to AC/DC overall. They've kind of worn on me, and I don't say I hate them, so get off me. I still love and respect AC/DC. I'm just saying I can't sit down and listen to a lot of songs from them anymore.
I get it. I totally get that. They are played constantly on a lot of the satellite stations I listen to, and it just depends what it is now. But yeah, it gets to be a little too much. But overall, I love AC/DC, but I agree. There could be a little. And honestly, they've had so many albums. I have no idea. I've heard of Fly on the Wall. I have not heard of any of those songs that are on that.
Yeah, that's a problem too, because that's still in the age of MTV, and for them, they don't have the ability to put any hits out. That's pretty crazy. So, certainly for them. And moving on, our love for Italian food aside, what's up with this?
That's another.
What is up with Guns N' Roses? The spaghetti incident. Please tell me, what is this?
I mean, what could they do though? I mean, they after Use Your Illusion, what were they going to do? A double set album. It was whatever many times platinum. They toured for that for 17 years, I think, for Use Your Illusion. So once they were done with all of that, they had to get back to something. So this is what it was. I mean, they had Lies in between, but this was terrible. I mean, this and obviously Chinese Democracy, a few years later, but this I agree. This is absolutely a horrible, horrible album that should not have been released at all. But that's Guns N' Roses for you, man. They did. There's 3 good albums from this band. As great as they were, they released 3. I mean, one great album is Appetite, but Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 were very good albums. If you ask me, they weren't great like Appetite was, but. It's crazy that this band is so popular, been around for so long, still well known, even relevant today, touring. But they're doing it off of Appetite. That's really you just take a couple songs here and there off Use Your Illusion or whatever. There's nothing off of Spaghetti Incident or Democracy. They're probably only going to use Patience off of Lies, so that you're going to hear if you see them live now. It's just so crazy how this band really is just completely rode the coattails of one album.
Yeah, my brother and I got to see them very recently. And I mean, it's actually kind of crazy because, like you said, it's very much a situation where they're kind of running off of that very first album. I don't know if I love anything past that stuff, if I'm being honest. Like I don't really know anything.
But there isn't anything. They didn't do anything else. They had, after Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, they had Lies, and then Spaghetti, and then many years later, the Chinese thing, whatever the heck that was. That was just Axl, though, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think there was anyone else in the band other than Axl with Chinese Democracy. That can't even be considered really a Guns N' Roses album. So that's what you got from that band. They just hit on Appetite. So just like Nirvana did with Nevermind, they just absolutely hit.
That's a picture I took
a
few weeks ago.
Y'all close as hell.
Yeah, we were
fat. Doesn't look as cute as he used to.
Yeah,
we were dance anymore.
he's a scary looking dude now because he's all puffy and
I know.
he has all these weird faces that he does, man. Like, I don't know, man. But again, we were waiting for
There's a face. I used to be cute. Chicks used to dig me.
But here's the deal, though. He ran around the stage just like he always did.
Good for him.
And it was.
I actually saw him fill in for AC/DC. Speaking of AC/DC and Guns N' Roses, he filled in when Brian Johnson was out with that whole throat thing, and they continued their tour. So I saw him in Fort Lauderdale, and he had broke his leg at that time, I think. So he was in the big throne. It was hilarious, but he actually did a pretty decent job filling in and singing AC/DC songs. He let Angus kind of be the frontman and go crazy because it's his band, obviously. But I thought he did a pretty decent job. I was surprised that Axl was able to do that. It was not bad.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any band that you think has a horrible album, drop it in the comments section. That'd be hilarious. So one of my all-time favorite rock and roll bands, Kiss, decided they're going to come out with an album called Unmasked. And had they not thrown this on the front cover and maybe put it on the inside, if they had just put this as like a black cover that said Kiss Unmasked and you had to open it in order to see them unmasked, but all you got was a cartoon of them pulling their masks off to reveal the same fucking paint underneath, they probably would have pissed a lot of people off. But this album was a bizarre departure, man. Shandy, if you will, is a very bizarre love song that got massive play in Australia for some reason. But in my opinion, with the exception of Torpedo Girl, which is one of the funkiest Kiss songs you will ever hear in your life, sung by Ace Frehley, that album is absolute garbage, man. I did not know what they were doing, and we can go on after Creatures of the Night and Lick It Up even after that, and go Hot in the Shade. We could talk about a lot of bad Kiss albums, but that one sort of was the beginning of them making really fucking bad albums, man. God love them. They did, they had a great album cover. It was really cool to see them in comic book form, as everyone has seen before, but God, that album sucked, man. Really, really bad. And how about this one right here?
Yeah. Generation Swine, from a band that really actually was finally putting stuff together that, sounded decent. But no, this is what you get out of them. Just an absolute terrible album. And this was after Vince Neil was gone and then back again. So this is when he came back. I think it was 5-6 years he was gone. And they just tried to I think what they wanted to do here was bring back that sound. But that they had 97, right? Because that's what they wanted to see if they could remake again, much later. And with Vince coming back at that point, his voice has already changed. He couldn't hit those registers the same, but they would keep trying it. And this was an absolute terrible album from what I think is a really great band, because they had more than one really good album, with Girls and Theater, and Feel Good's not even bad, and obviously Shout at the Devil's their best, and Too Fast for Love's a great album as well for being a debut album. But this particular one, there's nothing on here anybody knows. I mean, obviously bringing back Shout at the Devil, stuff like that, but there's no one knows any of that.
Is that a remake?
It's something they
did. Is that a remake of Shout at the Devil?
That's it. I believe it is. Yeah, it's not worth listening to. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's absolutely terrible. And real quick, since you didn't give me a chance to comment on Kiss, since now you're the Kiss guy here, but you did it again with Kiss and picking the album that started the mess, because I picked Crazy Nights, which I think is probably one of the worst albums by any band ever. But but again, I'd like your point about always finding the album that was the first one that they then began making bad albums. Crazy Nights is horrible. I'm sorry.
Oh my God, man.
Oh my God, they played it when I went and saw them. I was like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you playing this song? It sounds worse live.
Oh God, dude, I don't even want to know.
So bad. My daughter sings it to me just because she knows I don't like it. It's really funny.
Yeah.
And then she makes up words.
Unfortunately, you would be tortured to death right now if she decided to memorize anything from this album, my friend. What would you do if what would you do if that beautiful little daughter of yours decided to rock out to a leader of the pack, but Dee Snider's Twisted Sister version of it, man? How about that?
No, be cruel to your school, and no. This is what's crazy with this album. First of all, she does actually like Twisted Sister, not this album though. Obviously, we stayed with the much better albums, and she really was into Dee Snider. We had an old cassette tape, believe it or not. It was Chase, and I had a whole bunch of old concerts on it, and one of them was an old Twisted Sister concert, and she was in my room checking it out. She's like, wow, this guy is crazy looking. So she's actually a fan of Twisted Sister and would probably sing some of these songs. But and what's funny is she would come out and play, because this album was an album that I absolutely loved when it came out. I mean, I was 11, 12 years old. I'm just started listening to this kind of music, and that's what this album was made for, was people between the age of probably 6 or 7 and maybe 13 or 14. And to this day, if you listen to it now, you'll feel that. It is almost made to be for that group, because there was that music was starting and it was hitting for people like that. Quiet Riot was doing this. There was so many different bands that were kind of putting this kind of music out that was very catchy, easy to sing, and just followed along in such a way that kids could really want to get into that music. And then also have something as crazy as Dee Snider to have on your album covers that would always freak your parents out a bunch too. So that was always fun as well. But this particular album, even though it hit for me great at the age I was when it came out, is a terrible album. The music is so corny, and it absolutely belongs there. And this is where I said earlier, where we were talking about great bands and bad albums. I don't know if you call Twisted Sister a great band, but at the end of the day, with the influence and everything else that not just Twisted Sister, but Dee Snider had over music in general, and even to this day, he's still so involved. I believe that they are a great band, just because Dee is just absolutely an incredible musician and individual.
Yeah, Stay Hungry is by far one of my all-time favorite heavy metal albums. It had such a massive effect on me, and I'm talking outside of the hits, the deep cuts off of there, the Burn in Hell. The Price is one of the great songs.
Great song.
There's a lot of great shit they did, and a lot of people. If you haven't seen the documentary about Twisted Sister that they came out with, you need to watch it. Everybody in the audience, anyone who's listening right now, they had been touring since like the '60s. Twisted Sister is not a band that just popped up in 1982. A lot of people do not understand and will not understand how long they had been touring and battling other people in the glam scene before the glam scene even blew up. It's quite an amazing story, and they all maintain their the original members, obviously, with the exception of I believe AJ Pero passing away. I'm not sure who else, but yeah, they were one of the great bands. And again, this is sort of one of their shitty situations, and
it fit though. I feel like it still somehow it fit, even though this album came out right after Stay Hungry. I mean, this followed Stay Hungry, so it's just it's interesting considering even like you said, they've been touring since the '60s. Their first album was Under the Blade in '82. And that's a great album. I mean, and they had 2 more years until Stay Hungry came out. But Under the Blade, to me, is also a very, very underrated album from Twisted Sister. But I've been listening to them a little bit more actually lately since that video came up, and definitely got more Twisted Sister in my music lately, which is why my daughter is now listening to Twisted Sister too.
I had been running through some of the popular articles online. A few of the albums we talked about were involved in that, but some of them weren't. But I believe, let's see, there was a Judas Priest album on that list. Turbo.
Oh, it's got to be Turbo, of course. It's Turbo. Yeah. I mean, again, that's another one that I loved when it came out because it fit. It was perfect for. I was like, oh, I love this. This thing is great, And
there's an Iron Maiden one on the list.
No, you got a couple of options on Iron Maiden, but to me, it's definitely with Blaze. Anything with Blaze is the worst album. Nothing with Diano or Dickinson is the worst album from Iron Maiden, though. So it's anything that Blaze did. I don't even know what the dang albums are called that he did, but those are the worst Iron Maiden albums. I don't want to hear it otherwise.
A lot of people would say that. That's the truth. I don't know. There's one I don't know.
Fear of the Dark or whatever. That's fucking. That might just be their song on that album. But I don't. There's a whole middle world there, after Seventh Son that just for me just fell off. That's another one. It's another band. I mean, that's where it started, and up until recently, to be honest, I mean, their last two albums now have been fun to listen to. So but there was a time there. I mean, when Bruce was gone, obviously, not going to anything that anyone named Blaze sings for as a lead singer for Iron Maiden is going to be a terrible album. Sorry.
There's some on this list too. Def Leppard's Songs from the Sparkle Lounge from 2008.
I don't even know what that is.
We got Chinese Democracy there.
See, terrible.
It's let's see, share. Let's see if
you can throw in you go with the Beatles, one of the best bands ever, right? I mean, one of the most popular bands ever. Their worst albums on there too. I mean, it's Yellow Submarine. That's terrible. That was made just for the show and the whole thing to kind of work for that. But the album that's one of the worst albums made. It's a terrible album. And from obviously an iconic band.
So we've got.
Look at this.
Celtic Frost, Deep Purple. Yeah, we got. So this is Sparkle Lounge from Def Leppard. I don't even know what the hell that is.
No idea what that is.
Dio, Angry Machines, 96. That can't be great. And that's Dio. So here's that Chinese Democracy.
Crap.
Iron Maiden Virtual 11.
I don't even know. Yeah, see? Blaze Bailey. That's right. See? Told you. That's the worst one. Makes sense.
Oh, God. What was that all about? Judas Priest Demolition.
That was a terrible thing. I feel so bad for the people.
Here we go. Kiss, Hot in the Shade.
They went with Hot in the Shade. See? I'm telling you could just throw a dart and find a whole bunch of crappy Kiss albums. Sorry.
Metallica, Saint Anger.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they start going a little deep. Oh, there we go. We got Generation Swine.
See? There we go. Crap.
Ozzy, Pantera. That is not fair. That's like their first album. That's before they were even hardcore.
I mean, terrible artwork as well. I mean, that should be on that category, really.
They were hair metal at this point, but yeah, that's kind of crazy. But yeah, there was a lot of similar ones on the list, but I still think that we hit on the good ones.
We did all right, man. We did all right. And
if anybody wants to contest us, please do throw it in the comments after the fact. If you didn't watch us live, thanks to the dozen or so people that came on and hang out with us on live, decided to chill out with us. But yeah, that's pretty much. We're going to go on record and say I think those are pretty much the top. We could go on with a few more, but those are the top ones in my eyes.
I'm with you, man. I think we covered most of what I was looking at today. It's always fun researching this stuff and looking at this kind of stuff up and just reminding yourself of what some of this music is and stuff that we used to listen to, and then also seeing some of these really great bands. And looking at some of their worst catalogs. I'm sure it's not what the band wants you doing, but it's definitely interesting to look at with bands that have such great catalogs overall, other than Guns N' Roses, pretty crappy catalog.
They put the albums out. We didn't, we're just over here. We're just over here critiquing them, but
yes, we are.
At any rate, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Casually Serious podcast. For my brother, Ken Man over here, I am Bob, and thanks again for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next week. Have a great one.